I've always heard it said that behind every successful man, there stands a woman telling him he's wrong. But did you notice what happened just before the start of the second reading? Well, behind every successful woman, there stands a man. Good job, Bob. Today we celebrate Christ the King, our be-all and end-all. This being the last weekend of the liturgical year, we are reminded once again that everything begins from God and has its completion in God. Everything proceeds from God and goes back to God. That's what all the three readings are about. And that is why our founding fathers of our parish thought of this mission for us, for our parish community, to know and love Jesus and follow Christ in compassionate service. And throughout the liturgical year, every feast that we celebrate is a gentle prompt, a reminder, an invitation to make Christ our King, the King of our universe. And so, I leave this question with you. Is Jesus your King? If you don't like the term King, is Jesus your be-all and end-all? I have not lifted a barn. Has any of you? Well, Herman Oster did lift one. Herman is a farmer in Bruno, Nebraska, and when he bought a land with a barn in it, there was this creek flowing by the side. And when it rained during the monsoon, the river swelled and the barn was standing 29 inches in water. And one day, while sipping his soup, eating his soup, he said half jokingly and half sarcastically to his family, "If I had sufficient men, I would lift the barn to a higher ground." Fortunately for him, one of his sons, Mike, was listening. And given his engineering background, Mike went back to the barn later, looked at the boards, the wood, the beams, the nails, and calculated the weight of the barn. And he arrived at 19,000 pounds. And he went deeper into it and came up with the fact that 344 men or women were needed to lift that barn. And how to lift a barn? Again, he didn't give up. He got very creative. Using rods and girds inside and outside of the barn, he provided handles. And where do you find 344 men or women? To their luck, a happy coincidence, Bruno, the little town, was celebrating his centennial anniversary. And Herman, the farmer, the father of the family, announced in the newspaper a barn lifting competition. And given the spirit of our country, people came from all over the country to Bruno just to witness that. Thousands came from 11 states. And Herman and his sons chose 344. And when Herman counted 1, 2, 3, the men gathered, lifted the barn as though it were nothing at all, and carried it to a higher ground 50 yards away in a matter of 3 minutes. When people gather together, miracles happen. The pandemic struck, and we came together. You came together as St. John Vianney, and a miracle did happen. The pandemic struck. Many churches closed down, even in our own vicinity. Many others let go of all their staff, and still others slashed the salary, I suppose, with the staff consent. But we made a decision, and because it was an administrative decision on your behalf, I had the responsibility and the privilege of making that decision. When I told the staff, we sail together or sink together. And because you rose to the occasion, you carried the barn to a higher level. And I stand here today with a grateful heart to say, you did it. Thank you. The pandemic struck, and people responded to it, reacted to it in so many ways. One of our staff was asked, and how was the pandemic for you? And would you believe it? Debbie said, awesome. Crazy, right? Sometimes she is. I know her well. And she went on to explain, well, the pandemic brought out the best in our community. It brought out love. It brought out their caring spirit. It brought out their generosity. And I second what Debbie said. The pandemic was awesome in the sense that it made us better and not bitter despite the many hardships. And I'm here to say that you did lift the barn to a higher ground. And I want to say thank you and may God bless you. You gave and gave freely. You gave joyfully and you gave generously. And because your giving was constant, continuous, and consistent, the members of the staff, the ministers, and the finance council and I were able to continue with the many services that we offered. Think of the way we celebrated the Eucharist during the pandemic. The CDC closed the doors on congregating, and it allowed 18 persons. And it was the month of June. Little children and their families and families from across the country were waiting to celebrate their first Holy Communion. And what did our staff do? They brought them into the church, one family at a time, on the weekdays as well as on Sundays, and we had our first communion for so many children, for every one of them. And when the CDC allowed us to congregate in the church and put a ceiling on it, like certain percentage, we were able to have a mass. But there were those who were hesitant to come into the church indoors, and for right reasons. And we had outdoor masses. You remember we tried to have a mass, and some of you were seated in your cars, and others in the parking lot. It happened not just at the weekend, but even on weekdays, we had a mass here and mass outside, 2 masses, with not many priests around. And all the while, the mass was being streamed. So as I thank you today for your generosity, together with you, I'd like to come on your side and say to our members of the staff and to the ministers, thank you. Our staff stayed with you and with me, with us. And together we were able to pilgrimage through the pandemic. And there was also another category of people who wanted Mass and communion. They wanted not to come inside, not even congregate outside, but they needed communion, and we had drive-by communion. And I loved the other thing, the drive-by reconciliation. People could sit in their car, I would wave to them, they would pick up the phone and call, and I would respond. They make their confession in person and at distance, and they speed away receiving communion. And all the time they remembered to drop off their collection, which we never even solicited. You people gave and gave of yourself. You became better, not bitter, with the pandemic. You didn't just trot through or drag along during the pandemic, but you did pilgrimage through the pandemic. And that is why I say again, you did it. You lifted the barn of St. John Vianney to a higher ground. And for this, we say thank you. Think of one other ministry. We refer to them as the nuns, N-O-N-E-S. When you ask them for religion, this particular age group of young adults, they always write none, and therefore the term. But the pandemic didn't just chase them away. We were able to stay in touch with 45 young adults, or around that number, during the pandemic. And we consider that as one of our accomplishments and achievements and high points. And that is why I say it again, you did it. You lifted the barn together for the Lord to a higher ground. And for this, I say thank you and God bless you. This is a Sunday when pastors will come before their congregation and pray and plead, and I dare say beg for money. But all I'm going to say to you today is thank you and may God bless you. One other thing I need to share with you. The federal government doled out loans for sinking businesses and non-profit organizations. And every parish that found itself in a situation could apply for the 600,000 loan. And that was to be paid back or not, or it would be a gift. We did not know at that time. And so we had to make the decision. And because the decision was a little dicey, I left it to the Finance Council to decide. And they sent it back to me, getting even with me, with a 50-50 verdict, and said, Father William, you have the pleasure of breaking the tie. I sat with it. I spoke to our members of the staff, and we realized that we are a people of God, a church of God, a family of God, a family that God feeds and provides for, a God who wouldn't hesitate to bring manna from the skies or draw water from the rock. And we are a people that pray for daily bread. And moreover, we realized that we could lean on to your generosity, to your goodwill. And so I broke the tie and made the decision not to take a $600,000 loan. Let that go to a poorer parish or to a family business that is failing, because we are a people that trust God and lean into your generosity. And that is why I say it again. Together, you did it. You lifted the barn to a higher ground. And this is also a time of thanksgiving. And this Thanksgiving, I'll be giving God thanks for the gift of you. And for Christmas, we have, the Finance Council tells me, a $150,000 budget. Nothing new for our community. We did it during the pandemic. But because I'm impressed with your generosity, and because you, for a change, lead me, your pastor, by your example, ordinarily I do a $1,000 donation for Christmas and Easter, but this time I'm going to make it $1,500. That would be my contribution. I say that to impress on you that I'm doing it because I am blown away by your generosity. And I make that contribution not from my savings For savings, I have none, but I will be making it from my earnings. So it will go out from my credit card. And believe me, I would love to make that because of you, my people. You have been generous and you did it. You lifted the barn to a higher level. And so as you give, let it be a planned giving, not on the spur of the moment. Let it be a purposeful giving. Make it intentional. Let it be a prayerful giving. Discern it. Talk about it to your family. Let it be a proportionate giving. Those of us who have been blessed with more, let's give more. After all, it comes back manifold. And finally, let it be a progressive giving. Let's keep rising in our giving to God, for it is a privilege to give to God. And so, I have just 2 words to say to you. Thank you, and may God bless you, because you did it. You lifted the barn to a higher ground. For that, together with the staff and ministers, I say thank you.